Most of us think that serial killers are monsters that exist far away, creatures locked in the pages of history books, or the focus of chilling documents we watch from the safety of our couches. We imagine them as shadows that could never touch our lives, figures too distant to ever be real. But the terrifying truth is that many people have unknowingly come face to face with evil and lived to tell the tale. What makes these encounters so disturbing is not just the violence that followed, but the violence that almost happened. In these moments, the victims didn't know who they were speaking to or how much danger they were in. A friendly smile, a stranger asking for help, or a ride offered on a quiet night. Things that seem harmless until, in a flash, there slips. Serial killers don't always look like villains. They don't always prowl in the shadows. Sometimes they're standing right in front of you, holding open a car door or asking for your assistance. They blend in, they charm, they wait. And in the space of a single decision, whether you say yes or no, whether you fight back or freeze, your life can either continue or end. Tonight, we are going to explore 3 very real stories of people who came horrifyingly close to death at the hands of some of the most infamous killers in history. These are not tales of police chases or courtroom trials. These are the moments before the headlines, the moments where ordinary people were inches away from becoming victims. And perhaps the scariest part of all is that survival often came down to nothing more than instinct, luck, and good timing. I didn't see a monster that evening. I saw a man with a cast on his arm and a smile that looked warm, almost shy, the kind of smile that makes you feel impolite if you don't return it. The mall parking lot was thinning out, the kind of quiet where sound carries strangely. Shopping carts rattling 2 rows away, car doors thumping shut, the occasional echo of laughter fading as families left. I was alone, but I didn't feel dangerous, just ordinary. "Excuse me," he said. His tone was light, friendly, disarming. "Would you mind helping me? I've got some books. My arm's not much use right now." I glanced at him. Neat brown hair, cast on his left arm, clean button-down shirt. He looked safe, harmless. My thirst for it wasn't fear, it was sympathy. He gestured towards a tan Volkswagen Beetle parked just a few steps away. "If you could just slide them in for me, I'd be very grateful." I said yes. I didn't even think about it. We walked side by side. His pace matched to mine, and I remember noticing how calm he seemed. The Beetle looked unremarkable, a little dusty, with a jacket folded neatly in the back. The passenger seat was already pushed forward. It was all staged, though I didn't know it then. I leaned down, ready to help. That's when it happened. A sudden hard blow struck the back of my head. Not enough to knock me out, but enough to disorientate me, make my vision stutter. My first reaction was confusion, my second was terror. Something sharp pressed against my back, a crowbar hidden by the car. And his voice, stripped of politeness, came out in a flat, maniacal, "Get in." Everything in me rebelled. My body screamed what my mind hadn't yet caught up to. I was in danger. I braced against the door frame, hands digging into the cold metal, refusing to move. He pushed harder, trying to fold me inside like I was cargo. I screamed. The sound shocked even me. Loud, raw, animal. It startled him. Just enough. I lashed out, kicking backward. My heel hit bone. He grunted but didn't let go. His fingers clamped onto my wrist, iron strong. Pain seared through my shoulder as I twisted, yanking with everything I had. I screamed again, louder, and this time it carried across the rows of cars. Somewhere, a car clattered to a stop. A man's voice shouted, "Hey!" Footsteps quickened, and then it changed. His grip loosened, his face emptied, as if he erased himself in an instant. No anger, no panic, just calculation. He let me go, stepped back, and without a word circled around to the driver's side. He slid into the Beetle as though nothing had happened. I stumbled away, shaking, clutching another car for balance. My breath came in gasps. A woman rushed towards me, her hand hovering near my arm. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded too fast, unable to form words. The Beetle reversed in a smooth arc. Pausing at the end of the row, the brake lights glowed like twin red eyes. For one heartbeat, I thought he'd look back. He didn't. He drove away, calm as he approached me. Later, when police questioned me, I described him. Average build, neat, brown hair, polite voice, arm in a cast. They exchanged glances, the kind that told me I wasn't the first to say those words. Weeks later, I saw his photo in the paper. Ted Bundy, the man who had smiled at me, the man who had almost shoved me into that car, was one of the most prolific serial killers in history. People told me I was brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt lucky. Lucky that my heel landed. Lucky that I screamed loud enough. Lucky that a stranger heard me. Even now, I replay it. What if the lot had been emptier? What if my voice hadn't carried? What if I'd gone quietly, trusting his smile? Survival is fragile. Sometimes just one scream louder than silence. Since then, I've changed the way I move through the world. I keep my keys between my fingers. I know where the light poles are in every lot. I listen when my skin prickles with unease. Because Ted Bundy didn't look like a monster. He looked like someone you could trust. That was his disguise. His cast was a prop. His car, his smile, all props. I was one decision away from being a name in the paper instead of a voice telling this story. I still hear him sometimes, in memory, his flat voice saying, "Get in." I still see the glow of those red Blake lights fading, and I know just how close I came to vanishing. Los Angeles, 1985. The city was gripped by terror. Headlines screamed about a figure who seemed less like a man and more like a phantom, slipping through windows, leaving behind bodies and fear. They called him the Night Stalker. But for one woman, the legend wasn't born from newspapers. It was born the night he stepped into her home. She had been up late, the summer heat pressing against the walls of a family's small house. At first, the sound was small, a faint scrape against the window, the kind of noise you almost dismiss as the wind, but the repetition froze her blood. Someone was moving the sliding pane of glass. The house was dark. Every creak in the floor sounded like thunder to her ears as she stepped into the hallway. Her first thought was that it was her brother sneaking back inside. Relief flickered until she saw him. A tall, wiry figure slipped through the opening, landing inside with the predator's grace. His silhouette was framed by the moonlight. When he stepped forward, she caught the glint of metal, a knife. His face came into view, gaunt, pale, almost skeletal. His eyes burned with something not quite human, and when he smiled, his teeth were blackened, rotting. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to tilt. She froze, he froze. The silence between them was suffocating. He didn't rush, he didn't speak. He just stared, knife glinting, his chest rising in slow, deliberate breaths. In that silence, she understood what he was, the Night Stalker. Her body begged her to scream, but fear strangled the sound in her throat. She'd stood there, heart pounding so hard she thought it might shake the walls. He tilted his head, studying her like prey, and then, without a word, he turned. He slipped back out the window, the way he'd come in, and he was gone just as fast. She stood there for what felt like hours, unable to move, unable to breathe. Only later, when news reports showed his face, did she understand the gravity of that moment. Richard Ramirez had been in her home. He had chosen to leave. Why? No one can say. Perhaps he didn't like what he saw. Perhaps he was waiting for another night. But she knew, with bone-deep certainty, that her life had hung on by a thread thinner than air. Ramirez would go on to kill again. Families slaughtered in their beds. couples attacked in their own homes, and always the same signs: a broken window, a shadow in the night, a knife glinting in the dark. The woman never forgot the eyes that had pinned her to the floor that night, eyes that decided, in silence, whether she would live or die. For her, survival wasn't about fighting or fleeing. It was about stillness, about the fragile mercy of a killer who, for reasons only he knew, walked away. And that perhaps is the most terrifying truth of all. Sometimes survival isn't earned, it's just given. And when it's given by a predator like Richard Ramirez, it never feels like safety. It just feels like a countdown. I didn't know his name then. No one did. He was just a stranger at a bus stop on a humid Milwaukee night, standing in the dull glow of the street lamp like he belonged there. He looked ordinary, pale, quiet, dressed in jeans and a shirt that clung to his thin frame. He asked me where I was heading. His voice was soft, almost uncertain, like he wasn't used to small talk. He offered me a ride. He said his place was close, and he had drinks, maybe some movies, just a way to pass the time. It didn't sound threatening, not exactly. Men did this in the city all the time. Sometimes they wanted company, sometimes they wanted more. I hesitated. Something about his stillness, his flat effect, nagged at me, but I got in. The inside of his car smelled faintly metallic, like rust. He drove without music, without chatter, eyes forward, hands fixed on the steering wheel. When he did speak, it was about nothing. Beer, movies, the weather, but the silences stretched long and unnatural, the kind that made you count the blocks until you arrived. His apartment was dim, curtains drawn tight, though it was barely evening. The air was thick and stale. There were photos on the walls, men, shirtless, posed awkwardly, almost lifeless in expression. I did notice a foul odor I couldn't quite place. He mumbled something about spoiled meat in the fridge. He offered me a drink. My instinct screamed at me no, but I pretended to sip, keeping my fingers tight around the rim, lifting it to my lips only slightly. His eyes followed me, hungry in a way I couldn't name. He talked in circles, his words halting. Then he leaned closer. His smile was wrong and crooked, empty, like he was practicing an expression he didn't truly feel. That was when I saw the cuffs on the table, the glint of metal, casually left in view. My pulse surged. He asked me if I'd try them on just for fun. His voice was flat and monotone, but beneath it was an urgency, a pressure. I laughed it off, said maybe another time. He didn't push, but his eyes didn't leave me. I excused myself to the bathroom, heart hammering. I stared into the cracked mirror, whispered to myself that I had to leave now. The apartment smelled worse down the hall, like decay clinging to the drywall. I turned the faucet, let the water run, buying time. When I stepped back out, he was standing closer than before. Too close. He tilted his head, studying me. "You should stay," he said softly, as if it were both an offer and an order. Something inside me broke loose. I forced a laugh, told him I had to meet a friend, and edged towards the door. He didn't move. For a long second, I thought he wouldn't let me go. Then, almost reluctantly, he stepped aside. The hallway outside never looked so beautiful. I didn't run, not until I hit the street, not until I could see headlights and hear normal voices again. Years later, when his face filled every news broadcast, when the horrors of his apartment spilled out into the world, drums of acid, skulls, bones, photographs, I realized who I'd shared that room with: Jeffrey Dahmer, the man who had consumed lives piece by piece. I lived because I trusted my instinct to refuse the drink, to stall, to walk out, but I also lived because, for reasons I'll never understand, he let me, and that knowledge haunts me more than anything. Survival wasn't a triumph then, it was only a coin flip. When people ask me how I felt, I tell them this: evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it greets you quietly, holds the door open and offers you a drink. And sometimes the only thing standing between you and the abyss is the moment you decide to walk away. And there you have it. 3 encounters, 3 narrow escapes from the darkest corners of human nature. Bundy's charm, Ramirez's silences, Dahmer's quiet menace. Each one a reminder that real horror doesn't always wear a mask or hide in the shadows. Sometimes it smiles, sometimes it knocks on your window, sometimes it just waits. What do you think is more terrifying? The monsters that look like monsters, or the ones who pass for ordinary men until it's too late? Thank you for watching. If you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who thinks true crime is just pure entertainment. Because sometimes survival is more fragile than we'd like to believe. This has been Dr. Insomnia. Stay safe out there, and make sure you keep your doors locked.